Welcome to this demonstration of SharePoint Designer Lockdown. As many of you probably know, you really don't have many options when it comes to trying to lock down SharePoint Designer. There are several ways of which we can give access or take away access. Some of the ways that we can give access is through the permissions of the site. We can make people site collection admins. And as being a part of site collection admin, you actually are able to use SharePoint Designer, provided that the settings for the site collection, these here SharePoint Designer settings, actually are turned on. Alright, so in this case, if I turn this off, the only people that can actually are allowed to edit are the site collection admins. Alright, so everybody else would be denied. But the problem is many people in the world design their sites rather inappropriately from a web app and site collection standpoint. Some people simply only have one site collection in their farm, and so that really becomes not possible to manage from being able to deny people access to SharePoint Designer or give them access. And so the idea is we want to, despite the settings that are here, despite the settings that exist in site permissions, as far as looking at these permission levels, and let's take a look at full control. Another way to remove their access is to actually come in here and say, you know, don't give them this use remote interfaces. But when you look at this, you're actually removing SOAP, you're removing WebDAV, you're removing the client object model, and you're removing SharePoint Designer. And the original goal is all we wanted was to remove SharePoint Designer access. So this obviously isn't going to work. The site collection thing's not going to work, and we're basically left with nothing. And so now we need to figure out how are we going to manage this. The people we know and trust to be able to use SharePoint Designer, we want them to have access, but we don't want to make them site collection admins, and nor do we want to mess with the permissions. And so what we have here is SharePoint Designer Lockdown. If I go right now and I open up our SharePoint Designer and I open up our ACS Apps Playground, we see that it lets me in. I am in fact the site collection admin. I'm a full owner of the site, and it does let me in. Now I'll go ahead and close this site, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to a list, very simple list that we have in here called the SharePoint Designer Lockdown list. And inside here we're going to see there are some accounts, and we see that there's an account here, ACS Administrator. And the way SharePoint Designer Lockdown works is you can actually, per site collection, say whether someone is allowed access or not. In this particular case, for our App.Architect and Connected Systems, we're allowing the access for ACS Administrator, and hence you just saw I was able to log in. Let's go ahead and edit this, and I'll remove the Is Allowed option on ACS Administrator. We'll then switch back to SharePoint Designer and try to open the site. And when we get here, we'll see that I'm not able to open the site. If I look at the details, SharePoint Designer access is in fact disabled for me as a user. Now, just them trying to access it, they're going to have to click through all of these wonderful OK boxes, which, hey, if they try to access, whatever, they shouldn't have been trying to do that. Now, if I go back and I give myself access again, I do the checkbox, I hit save, and I switch back to Designer and I try to open the site, I'll see that in fact I'm now allowed access to SharePoint Designer in that particular site collection. So as you can see, this is a much more elegant approach to locking down SharePoint Designer in terms of SharePoint 2010, and hopefully you will find it appealing and purchase our product. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at SharePointDesignerLockdown.com.